right, everybody. Welcome to another amazing episode of Roll or Die. Today we have a treat. We have Paul Tokgozoglu out of Missouri, United States of America. I think you're a purple belt still? You still a purple belt?
Yeah, I am. I'm a four-stripe purple belt, and I'm a
Whoa,
brown belt
four-stripe
in
purple.
judo.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. I did not know that. As you said, he's a four-stripe purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu, judo as well. He has his own podcast called Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. And prior to that, actually, you should check out that show, and we'll talk about that a bit more, so we won't go down that path yet. Prior to that show, I don't know if he still shoots it, but he had a podcast called Beyond Homosapien, which is where we first met. So Kim and I used to have phone calls back and forth. This Roll or Die did not exist. And Al Gunheim is another guy in the jiu-jitsu community. This is a quick share, by the way, but he set us up. He was like, Paul put out a post, I'm looking for someone who does business and this and that. Al Gunheim put me forward. I went on, it was my first ever podcast experience going on Paul's show. And somewhere along the line, Paul said, everybody should do a podcast. And so in my next weekly call with Kim, I'm like, hey, why don't we get some guests? Why don't we start to record this thing? And so really you are the godfather of Roll or Die, whether you know it or not. So that's why he's such a treat for us today. And yeah, coming at us from Missouri in the United States of America, as I said, his internet's a bit patchy, but I think we're going to be able to make this call work. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Yep, coming live to you from Ozark, nowhere. We're still trying to figure out our.
No.
Case in point, I think Anton looks like his internet has frozen exactly there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm back, but
Okay.
sorry if it's a little patchy, but thanks for having me on. I do Beyond Homosapien, I'm still recording. I was actually just thinking about recording a new episode today. And but I've actually only done a couple of episodes this year. I've been mostly focused on Jiu-Jitsu Outlet and also doing Airbnb and stuff like that. So yeah, awesome. Life is good. Thanks for having me on the show.
But tell us a bit about your other podcast, about your main one. The one.
So what Beyond Homosapien is about, I've been doing it since since like 2017. So I've been doing it for years. I've got around 300 episodes. And the show's all about human evolution and the future of the species and basically where everything is going. And it's funny because this is kind of why I wanted to get back to it, because a lot of the stuff that I predicted happening like 5 or 6 years ago is happening now or has happened. So a part of me like kind of seeing that wants to come in, and I just feel like encouraged, to be like, wow, I really maybe know what I'm talking about. Maybe I should keep going with this thing. But a lot of what we talk about is like hermetic philosophy, futurism, and psychic abilities, advanced human potential. Recently we did a podcast about invisibility, for example. Wow. Just like basically like evolving superpowers is kind of what we're getting into, and stuff like that. Kind of like the next stages of what human evolution are going to look like, merging with technology, merging with artificial intelligence, stuff like that. So awesome. If you're into that kind of stuff, you're going to like Beyond Homosapien. If you're into jiu-jitsu, you're going to like Jiu-Jitsu Outlet.
Bam. I love that, man.
I can see Anton's face light up. I think he loves that sort of stuff.
That's true. And you know what else Paul did, which really, like, that I was so nervous. If you go back and look at my episodes, like, I was so nervous. Ridiculous. Like, I've built up a lot of skills over the 150 episodes we've done, but so nervous. And the thing he does is he shoots their Facebook lives, right? So you're not dealing with this pre-recorded, we'll edit it down later. Like, it's just on and it's game on. And like, there's so much to learn just by that process as well. So different format.
That being said though, Anton, we don't edit much out of our podcasts.
No,
mostly we let it play.
But there's a comfort knowing.
Yeah, that's an option. It's an option. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Actually, Paul, I was more meaning around your jiu-jitsu podcast. Can you tell us a bit more about your jiu-jitsu podcast as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the Jiu-Jitsu podcast is about how Jiu-Jitsu helps with your mental health and how it helps with your life off the mats. I had Anton on recently, and we talked about how jiu-jitsu has helped him in business and how it's helped him as an entrepreneur. Just today, I launched a podcast with a guy named Nathan Brooks, who's a real estate investor and a developer. Like, this is a guy who makes real estate developments. Like, he's like at a super high level of the real estate game. And he's also has had MMA fights, so we talked about how has his MMA career helped him out as a real estate developer. So we get into conversations like that. More, we don't really talk much about like, oh, what's the best way to do a heel hook or a triangle choke. Like, we get into more like the esoteric stuff or the philosophical stuff, and the mental health side of things. Like, for me, I'm on the autism spectrum, so jiu-jitsu's helped me a lot with just being able to express all the energy that's inside of myself. And I found that I'm not alone. I found that that's like one of the main reasons why people stick with jiu-jitsu is because of all the mental health benefits, and because they fall in love with it. Like, they fall in love with all the things that they get out of jiu-jitsu, not just the the technique side of things. Like, the techniques are cool and they're super cool, and there is like an addicting element to the technique side, but the main reason that people love jiu-jitsu because of from the community that they build and from all of the other things that they get out of it, like the resiliency, and stuff like that. A lot less than, oh, I want to like win all the tournaments. Like, most people are not in it to win. It's funny. It's like most people are training jiu-jitsu not to win at jiu-jitsu. They're training just because of all the other stuff, because of the mental health stuff and all of that. So that's kind of what the show's about. And that's what we talk about. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. When you say mental health, right? I mean, so there's a lot of people going around saying jiu-jitsu saved me. You know what I mean? Which is totally valid. I get it. In a lot of ways it saved me. But when you talk about mental health, do you mean in that capacity, or is that like what does mental health mean to you in the context of this show?
That's a great question, and it's something I've thought about, like, kind of redefining in the way that I talked about the show, because you're right, like, there's a lot more to it. So it's almost more like mental optimization is kind of, I guess, what we get into. More like not just the the stuff about, oh, it makes me feel like, not depressed, but it gets other stuff too. Like, we get into talking about the resiliency aspect. I think is huge, like the ability to come back from defeat. That's something that we talked about. I forget who said it on the podcast. It'll probably come to me as I talk about it, but
Cool.
it was one of the early episodes. The guest was talking about how in jiu-jitsu you literally can practice over and over and over again getting out of a really bad situation and turning it around to your advantage. And you can
rep. I think I said that.
Was that you?
I think it might have been me.
That might have been you, bro.
That might have been me.
I thought it was on an earlier episode, but I guess what I've talked about, or what I'm getting at, is some random guest that came on the show at some point. No, I'm just kidding. But what I'm saying is, it's something where, that's not something that exists in most places in the world, where you can like rep failure all the time. So I think that's something that's come up like a lot on the show, is just the resiliency that gets built, like the mental fortitude.
Absolutely.
So we get into a lot of that kind of stuff, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we talk about mental health in a lot of different ways, but I guess not just I guess what you traditionally think about, but more so like the mental power cultivation.
Awesome, man.
Speaking of, I'm currently off the mats with an injury, and so I'm finding that challenging, the mental side of it. Do you have any tips, or can you remember anything any of the guests said about how to manage yourself during this time when you can't train?
Yeah, that sucks. And that it's one of the hardest times. Like, I've had some pretty bad injuries during my time. Like in 2021, I had a concussion, not from jiu-jitsu, but just from an accident, and not, at home. And I wasn't able to train for like 6 months. I wasn't able to train at all. And what worked for me was like just doing solo stuff at home, is because that was all that I could really do. Like, I worked my footwork a lot, like my wrestling, shadow wrestling and stuff like that. And I mean, obviously at first when I was really injured, I could just lay in bed, but there was that period in between where I could do something, but I didn't want to like overexert myself. So yeah, I got really good. I did a lot of the judo stuff. So I got really good at in judo, they call it the ukemi, or the when you're fitting in for the throw, and you're able to do that. Like you can fit in without a partner, practicing the footwork. And I worked on like my boxing, worked on my shadow boxing and stuff like that, so I'd say that, like, obviously you can go to class if you want. Like, I know a lot of people get stuff out of that where they just show up at class anyway. And there's definitely a lot to be said for the community aspect, like just going to hang out with your friends. Me personally, I need to like do jujitsu to learn. Like I'm not going to get any value from just watching class. Like I just zone out. I need to actually do it to like get anything from it. So I'm not someone who's just going to like show up at class with my arm in a sling, because I'm just like, I'm wasting my time. Like, I mean, it's good to see my friends. If I haven't seen my friends in a minute, then I'll show up, but I'm going for, social reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. No, I've done that a few times. It's probably more a double-edged sword. Sometimes they're going in to watch, because when you can't train, for me, it was just a reminder that I can't train. I can't be doing what everyone else is doing. It sucks. Yeah. Sometimes you feel almost worse for going, because you're reminded that you can't train.
Well, it sucks. So
yeah.
But that's what I would say, like, because that's what worked for me, in those months, is I worked on all my footwork, for all my throws, my wrestling, shadow boxing. And I feel like I made really good progress. Like I came back and I felt like my wrestling had improved, my judo had improved. So I don't know if you're into boxing, but I'm sure if you do a lot of shadow boxing, your boxing will improve. You know what I mean? So it's like, just do what you can, get a sweat going. Do what you can.
Actually, I'm glad you guys brought that up, right? Because for me, what I find, like, I'm the parent who refuses to sit on the sideline, right? Like, if my son's in basketball, I got to be the coach. I'm not sitting on the sideline. I'm just not going to sit there scrolling on my phone. I hate it, right? So if I go to jiu-jitsu and I'm watching, you're going to see me on the mat walking around coaching the white belts. I don't care whose class it is, whose club it is. Like, I'm just not going to sit still. And that's something that kind of works for me when I'm out. I'm not saying this is for everybody at all, but finding a way to contribute, psychologically, like because you're a black belt, Kim. So, it's especially easy for you. I'm probably giving them bad advice, but still, I'll still be there trying to be of service to others. And I find that keeps me out of my own head and out of my own world. Yeah. So that's my little personal, that's how I've gotten through tough times.
Yeah, agree. And Paul, tell us about like your jiu-jitsu journey then. We always ask our guests this, like how they discovered it, how they started.
Well,
hang on. Wait till your internet comes back, bro. Wait till your internet comes back. Wait.
Kid doing judo.
Wait, stop. 1 sec.
We missed the first 20 seconds of that. Sorry.
My bad. You want me to just start over?
Just that part, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So my dad's a judo black belt, and he started training judo when he was 7. So he got me involved in judo when I was a young kid, but I didn't really stick with it. Like I was really off and on with judo, like pretty much my whole childhood. And I wasn't really into it. I think I got like an orange belt over the course of like my entire childhood, basically. And then and I was super overweight as a kid. Like I just did a lot of video games and ate a lot of pizza, and I eventually got into smoking cigarettes and stuff like that. And I wasn't a healthy kid. So but when I was 19, I realized I wanted to join the army, and I wanted to like go out and do something with my life. So I realized I needed to lose weight to actually make that happen. So I remembered like, oh yeah, that judo thing that I used to do, that was always a good workout. So I went and I signed up for judo, and I went back and I did it 3 times a week, and I was super into it. And after judo practice, they had Brazilian jiu-jitsu practice. As anyone knows, like they're really essentially the same martial art. Like judo is really just a stand-up version of jiu-jitsu, especially because back then this was before judo had banned the leg takedowns. So we were still doing all the leg, the double legs and single legs in practice. So you know what I'm saying? So it's basically the same martial art. So from my perspective, it was just the same thing, so they had them both back to back. So I just did judo and jiu-jitsu class back to back 3 times a week. it was like 9 hours a week,
Wow.
basically, of training. And then I also did ninjutsu during that time. I did ninjutsu twice a week because I'd always wanted to be a ninja. And there was a
Who
ninja.
doesn't want
There
to
was
be a
a
ninja, man?
who doesn't want to be a ninja,
Wow.
bro? But there was a ninjutsu club. And that's something we could get into as green belt in ninjutsu. But I can't use those techniques on the mat because they're too deadly. I don't
No
want to kill
morning
anyone.
stars allowed
Yeah,
in
it's
a
too deadly,
jiu-jitsu
bro.
tournament, man.
But yeah, so but I did ninjutsu too. So I kind of like dabbled in other martial arts too. But basically what I'm saying is I basically did everything. And from my perspective, it was all like from a fitness thing. Cause I was like, oh, I'm trying to lose weight. So I was
Well,
like, I'll just do
the
as
weight must have fallen off, Paul, with that, because
yeah,
I know myself,
it
I
was
used
great.
to do, our club used to have judo class after jiu-jitsu, and I started doing that. And also, geez, your body would have been banged up a bit because personally, I just found judo really hard on me. So between that and jiu-jitsu, how did that go for you when you were first starting out? Because
It was great. So I lost 65 pounds in 6 months and totally changed my life basically. And it was the diet too, but I also did I did the Gracie diet. I went all in. I did the Gracie diet because that's what my coach said to do because it was a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy. And yeah, so I ate basically changed, I ate right. And I went running a couple times a week and I too. And yeah, I did lost 65 pounds in 6 months. And then I was able to go to college and do ROTC, which is like the Army officer program that you do when you're in college, basically. So I did that for 3 years. And then I did judo while I was in college because they didn't have any jujitsu. So I just did judo in college. And that was when I got my brown belt. And then I haven't actually trained judo since. So I haven't actually trained judo since I left college, but it's just because there's no judo. I've never been around a judo school, basically. It's only like jujitsu's taken off in case no one's noticed. Jujitsu is way more popular than judo these days, I'd say. So I've always been able to find jujitsu clubs, but I think like, anyway, what I'm saying is I haven't found a judo club, but I love judo. Like I'd still be training it if there was a club nearby, but
I love that. I love that story. So it sounds like jiu-jitsu really helped you change your lifestyle and
oh yeah.
turn a corner.
Yep. And I left the Army back in 2020, but I'll be hooked on jiu-jitsu for life. Like jiu-jitsu is going to last way longer than the Army ever did, but it did help me achieve that goal. But eventually I fell in love.
Oh no.
Damn that internet, man.
I just
We're
did
lying, huh?
I just did the maths. I don't let Theo edit out any of this because we can talk in the middle. I just did the maths. He lost 30 kilos
again.
in 6 months.
Yeah,
Wow, man. 30 kilos in
Ah.
6 months. That's a lot of weight, man.
Is it because
yeah,
we're
there's a
doing
lot.
it as a video, Paul, that your internet's sketchy? I'm wondering if we should
That's
switch.
because he lives in the country. That's why.
It's because I live in the middle of nowhere.
So, well, I'm fascinated to know, man, that you said before you're on the autism spectrum, right? Losing 30 kilos in 6 months, that's a lot of weight. Like what I know, obviously autism shows up in so many different ways, brother. Did you know that you were on the spectrum at this time? Was this something you
No.
were diagnosed with as a kid, or is this, and also what I know about being on the spectrum is sometimes it can show up in like obsession, not in a bad way, but are these things related? Like, tell us a bit about your autism journey, if you could, please.
Yeah, sure. So I was diagnosed when I was 25, and it was after I was in the military because they wouldn't have actually let me join the military if I had had the diagnosis prior. So I started having trouble pretty much as soon as I got on active duty, and basically as soon as I entered the real world, I started having some real noticeable issues. And looking back on it, like my whole life, I was homeschooled. I went to a really small private college. Like I was never really in like the real world, so to speak,
Right.
so then, I graduated, I moved to Germany because I was stationed overseas. I got married too at this time. I was dating someone and we got married, which was, we were I was like 21 when I made that decision, super young. And so it was like real quick, I entered the real world and I was just right away started having all sorts of problems and basically ended up having panic attacks every day. And I realized that like the environment was just too overwhelming.
Wow.
And I never deployed. Thankfully, I never had to deploy in the military. That would not have probably not have gone well. But basically the whole time that I was in, I was like dealing with mental health trouble, seeing the military mental health specialists, so like my command and everyone was aware that I had issues. But yeah, eventually I was also working with a civilian therapist because I needed someone who like actually specialized in autism, because that's kind of what I thought that this could have been. So I was doing like a bit of research just to see about this kind of like the sensory issues, sensory overwhelm, stuff like that. So I got diagnosed by a civilian therapist, if that makes sense. Kind of like someone that I found through Talkspace. I don't know if you guys know about Talkspace, but it's like an online therapy service that you can sign up for, and you can connect with therapists around the world. It's really cool, but it's a good way to get connected with like a specialist,
Amazing.
So yeah, so I did that, and I was in therapy for 3 years. That helped me a lot for just trying to realize like how to be. And I did a lot with mushroom therapy, a lot with psychedelic mushrooms, and those helped me a lot. I feel like those helped me kind of like rewire my whole brain, basically. And the mushrooms are crazy. This is something I've talked about on my podcast, but they actually helped me to get a glimpse of what it's like to not be on the autism spectrum. And they help me to see like from other people's perspective, because one of the big things with autism is what we call mind blindness, or like not knowing that other people are people too, basically. Like for an autistic person, they don't have like this internal like natural thing that just says like, oh, you're a person living your life. Like for me, it's like it's all very logical. Like I know that you, Anton, and you, Kim, are people who have lives in Australia, but there isn't like it's very hard for me to like empathy to like feel that. You know what I'm saying? Like I realized on mushrooms, because on mushrooms I was like, oh shit, like there's all these people around me. It was crazy. Like literally I took it and I realized that my wife was in the room like having her own experience. I was like, oh, it occurred to me like, oh, maybe I'm being too loud. Like maybe I'm bothering her because I'm being loud over here. Like that, such things had never occurred to me. Amazing. You know what I'm saying? It never occurred to me that you get what I'm saying.
I do.
So all this happened with mushrooms. So that helped that helped a lot, But I think, and I've talked about this on Jiu-Jitsu Outlet before, but I think the two together are super important. Like people, like right now, the psychedelic therapy is like all in the news about how it can help people, but you have to do it with like a therapist. You can't just like go in blind and take a bunch of mushrooms and expect that all your problems are going to be cured. Like, no, you have to, you have to go and also be in therapy and like talk to your therapist about it, So that's something that's huge, but that really, I guess I don't want to say cured me, because that was kind of the big thing, is there's nothing to cure. Autism isn't like a disease. It's just, you gotta, figure out how to cope with it, basically, how to use it as a superpower.
You are one of the most amazing people I know, bro. So, whatever the magic is that creates you, man, it's all good,
Yeah. And I think it's really cool as well, the way that you've sort of used it to empower other people, like through your podcast. Like scrolling through, you've actually got a podcast, autism is a superpower, OCD is a superpower. So you've actually used that too. And something else that comes out from looking through your list of podcasts is you've got some pretty big names on there, Paul. Like, do you mind if I ask like how you get people like Robert Drysdale and Elizabeth Clay and Braulio Estima? Do you just like ask them, or do you know those people personally, or
a little bit of both? Some of them I do, like just because I've been doing jiu-jitsu and judo now for 12 years combined. And because I was in the Army, I got to travel a lot. So I got to know like a lot of different associations and stuff like that. But honestly, like a lot of it is just messaging them. Like all those three that you just named, I just hit them up on Instagram. The thing is, you just got to stay on them. Like I do.
I try that. Anton doesn't see this too much behind the scenes. I'm trying this, but I can see they read it and they ignore it.
But Kim takes it personally, I think, a bit.
I do. I get very offended. They've read the message and they didn't even respond to say no.
Screw that Robert Drysdale guy.
Ghosting me. Me.
A few things, like it's a funny question, but just to extract, there's a lot here, like getting into just like sales in general. Because it's basically sales is what we're talking about. Like this was actually something that occurred to me on a mushroom trip. It's really funny to bring it up because we were just talking about it, but it was because I was pitching people for Beyond Homosapien and no one would reply. No one would reply. Or I would get people to book and they would cancel, or they would forget about it, or something would happen and it wouldn't work out.
Yeah.
Like most of the time I was getting like hardly any guests. And then I had a mushroom trip and I was like really trying to think this over because it was a big thing. And this little like mushroom voice came in my head and it was like, it's because they don't know why they should care about your podcast. And I think that like clicked to me. And I've used that a lot, just not for podcasts, but for sales too. And I think it's super important talking about all this stuff. It's like, you have to give people the reason why it's important. Like, and that's the thing that occurred to me was like, if they knew how important this show really is, they would never miss it. They would want to make it a priority to be on it. They would move everything around to make this happen. They're not going to forget. They're not going to reschedule because it's important to them. So like Braulio Estima, a great example. You mentioned Braulio Estima. He's all about mental health. Like he's doing all this work with the Reorg charity and stuff like that. So I know mental health is important to him. So I reached out and said, hey, do you want to come on my podcast and do a 20-minute interview about mental health? You know, and he's like, oh, of course. I love mental health. Here's my phone number. Let's set this up. You know, it's simple, but it's like, I think it's super important to like, you got to say like, what's in it for them. And just like, you got to stay like lead with your mission. Like we're trying to do this.
Well,
like,
we're trying to connect the community. Wouldn't you say, Antoine? That's probably our main thing. So we started during the lockdown and as a way to keep people connected, and we just kept going with that.
That's so true.
And I think it's important. You got to have it short. It's got to be like a short something.
Antoine's been big on that.
It's so amazing what you just said. You're spot on. But what I also realized is the way that we create our show with potential guests is come on for a casual chat. We should shift that, you know what I mean? Because it's not Kim's fault. She's saying what we've said to every 150 other guests. But if we said, come on, because we're trying to connect the jiu-jitsu community, that's a whole different reason for them to come on, you know? So I really think you're onto something there, man. And I really like, we just got trained. That's what.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh man. Thank the mushroom. Thank the mushroom.
Mushrooms.
And also go and get myself some mushrooms so that I can have those epiphanies of my own.
Well, maybe you don't need to. That's a big reason why I wanted to do Beyond Homosapien was so other people don't need to take mushrooms. I can just share all the crazy knowledge that came to me.
It's interesting what you said about it, though, about feeling very connected with people, because my understanding of some psychedelics is that, and mushrooms being one of them, that they lead very introspective and you actually almost want to be alone. You don't want to have people around you and you don't want that connection. So I'm wondering if that's something to do with the autism, that you're having a different experience with it to other people, or?
I think so. I've actually, I've had a lot of mushroom trips with a lot of different people, and I've had a lot by myself. I've done, and what the feedback that I've gotten over the years, and of course, this is all just a hypothetical story. It's all just a fictional story, of course, but hypothetically, in these hypothetical scenarios, I have gotten feedback that the experiences with me are not like most mushroom experiences, that for whatever reason is different. It's almost like they affect me differently or something. I don't know, but it's like I have a completely different experience than what most people like. Most people see stuff, like a lot of people have like hallucinatory experiences. I hardly ever do. It's like I sometimes do, but not really. So I don't know. I think they might just work differently with my brain, but I think ultimately it's all about, like, what I found about autism is it's a neurological difference. So it's a difference in the vagal nerve system. So I don't know if you've heard of the vagal nerve, but it's basically like it's like a nerve that connects all your organs together, basically. And autism it's a difference in that. So there's some abnormality in my vagus nerve system, allegedly. That's apparently what science is finding. So I guess when you think about that, it's like, I think that stuff like a psychedelic experience can be super beneficial for someone like me, because I think sometimes nervous system might need like a rewiring or almost like a reboot or even like an oil change, because I think it just doesn't work as well as other people, or maybe it just works differently. But I think stuff like that's super important for autistic people. But again, I'm not a medical person. I'm not a therapist. I don't play one on the internet. So
Disclaimer
definitely
as
don't
well.
take this as medical advice or anything.
No.
Also,
But
Roll or Die do not condone the use of psychedelics. We are aware they are illegal in Australia. So,
Well,
any
of
listeners.
course, all of these stories are just fictional things that I'm just making up off the spot. Of course,
That's right.
goes without saying.
It's so good. So actually, I learned something about the vagus nerve a while back, but we could go down that path, but I feel like we only have limited time left. So I was thinking about your merch, man, because you do one of the things you do really well is merch. You've got a really good kind of branding going on. Yeah, tell us about your merch journey. Yeah, we've got Kim's got merch. We've got Roll or Die merch.
That's it. T-shirt. But sorry, guys. Sorry, any listeners, they're not available yet because we only have 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Hell
Sorry,
yeah.
Paul. Go on.
Yeah, so train us in merch, man. Oh no,
It's frozen again.
we'll train you in how to get a decent internet connection.
I'll just have to.
One of these days, man.
to.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm super new, honestly, in the apparel journey and learning about it. I signed up for a mastermind with a guy named Callie Keen. He does a podcast called N Hype. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's really big into like the manufacturing game. And I've learned a lot from him about like how to make products and how to make things. So I'm working on a few different things. It's still too early to talk about, but I'm trying to actually like innovate some new things for the market, like some new ways to do jiu-jitsu. I don't know. I don't have I'll show you soon, but yeah, I'm working right now just on shirts, and it's all drop shipping right now, but I'm trying to work more on getting like my own stuff made. Something that I've done recently the last couple of years is I've done a lot of selling on eBay, just like selling used clothes. And that's, I think, is a great entrepreneurial exercise. And I know, Anton, you've done a lot with reselling as well, but reselling is great because you learn like what products are selling. So all that I'm doing is just taking like what's selling on eBay and what's super popular, and I'm just going to make like a jiu-jitsu version of that, basically. Put my jiu-jitsu as my outlet stuff on it, because, and just like a little insight, like kind of to explain what I'm talking about. Like right now, athletic stuff is huge. Like ever since the pandemic, everyone shifted to working at home. So now like sweatpants are huge. Anything with spandex, leggings, because leggings are great because you can wear them at the gym, you can wear them to jiu-jitsu class, you can wear them around the house, you can wear them as pajamas.
I won't stand up now, Paul, so you can't see my lower half, but yeah, I just said
Exactly.
upper half. Exactly what you're saying. Go on. Yes.
Case in point. So like I'm trying to make all that kind of stuff, but for jiu-jitsu. So we're not there yet. Like I'm going to start off just one thing at a time, but I've got prototypes that are coming in the mail. So hopefully it works out and I'll have some new stuff to launch soon. But that's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to make, is like almost like the Lululemon kind of stuff, but for jiu-jitsu, like that kind of feel. I don't know, like the high quality stuff. I don't see like anyone doing that in jiu-jitsu. Like no one is doing like apparel. Everyone's doing like gis and rash guards. No one's like, we're gonna master hoodies, stuff like that. So that's kind of more the route we're going.
Awesome, man.
Anton, let's take that angle in Australia. We can both do the same without stepping on your toes.
That's right. We can share knowledge.
Why not?
We can experiment with ideas, and that's great.
Yeah,
but I think the market is super open for jiu-jitsu right now. Like it's exploding. Jiu-jitsu is taking off like crazy. And like I said, there's like the gi brands. There's so many gi brands. Really hard to make gis and produce gis and stuff like that. You got to have a good like hookup for it, basically. Or you got to be someone like Origin, where they're like making gis themselves. Like that's next level. But the t-shirts, hoodies, like making a brand is really easy to get into. And the print on demand stuff does really well for like brand building. But what I'm trying to get into is like, again, like manufacturing custom stuff, like really high quality stuff. So that's where I want to go with it, but we're not there yet. We're right now still just doing print on demand, but hopefully soon some high quality stuff.
We're nearly out of time, Paul. Do you have any final words, any parting thoughts for our listeners?
No, not really. But if you want to learn about, Hermetic philosophy and the future of the species and psychic abilities and stuff like that, go look up the Beyond Homosapien podcast. And if you want to learn about jiu-jitsu and how it helps with mental health, go look up Jiu-Jitsu Outlet at jujitsuoutlet.com.
Yes,
Thanks for
everybody
having me.
must follow Paul's podcast. It's a requirement of being a RoD listener that you
Oh, I'm
also
glad.
follow, because we wouldn't exist without you, bro. So
Yeah.
like I really do thank you. You don't know how influential you've been. Maybe you do now. And yeah, I just
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a couple of other podcasts prior that this should be out in a couple of weeks. So if you could share that on your platform or in your social media, that would be really awesome for us.
Yeah, of course.
We really appreciate any growth that we can have for our audience. And yeah, thank you once again. Really appreciate you making the time and all the back and forth thing we had to do to get this to happen. So
Oh,
yeah.
it's nothing. I found like going back to the people you mentioned earlier, like the back and forth is normal, is what I found. Everyone's busy.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
if you can't do the back and forth, you're just never gonna have anyone.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's it.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
it.
happy
Thank you,
2022,
friends.
All right.
everybody. Let's have a powerful
Thank you.
2023. Cheers.
See
Thank you, friends.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.